Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of a Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and we are back once again to review on... Was it exciting? Yeah, it was exciting. There was certainly drama. There's always drama in the Scottish Premiership, regardless of whether there is much excitement throughout the 90 minutes. And so we look back on the 6 games, breaking them down one by one. And on this occasion, to help me do that, I am joined by my good friend, Tony Anderson. Tony, how's it going?
I'm very well, actually. Thank you. Thanks for asking. TV show's back this week.
Yes.
I'm excited to come through and see. I know we're doing it in a new arena, which gives it a certain je ne sais quoi, a bit of excitement about going in and actually seeing where we're going to be doing that. And then I had nephews over at the weekend, so it was quite a wholesome weekend, football and taking them out and about. So now we can record on Wednesday, and me and you can maybe have a good time after it as well.
And Telfer's up for it as well.
Is he up for it? Now we're talking. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. So I'm really pleased to hear that we'll all get that done and then get downstairs and firmly get involved in this.
Yes. Yeah, A View for the Terrace will be back on your screens this coming Friday. That is Friday the 3rd of October. It's the typical starting time of 10:30pm on the BBC Scotland channel, but you'll also get the chance to watch it on iPlayer early in the day. There is some changes, as Tony said. Going to be a new surroundings, can't even call it a studio, new surroundings for this one. And also it's only going to be a 45-minute show this time. So I've seen some people with some slight complaints about that in the Discord already, but do you know what, Tony? I think 45 minutes is actually maybe better. I think it'll make it tighter. I think, there's no lag at all. Fair enough, if you love the show that much that an hour wasn't enough for you, thank you. That's a great compliment to all of us. But I did think myself when I watched it sometimes, I felt like an hour, it was kind of hard to really kind of keep things at 10 out of 10 as we tried to do throughout that entire hour without there being any lags at all. I think 45 minutes will help us keep it just that little bit tighter and a little bit, no fat on it whatsoever, just all prime beef.
All killer, no filler. As
yes.
Sum 41 once proclaimed. I don't know if they proclaimed it or just named their album that. But, can't remember.
Yeah, I'm sure they were the only band to ever say that. But now I think it's time to talk about today's sponsors, NordVPN. There's so many different aspects of NordVPN that have been just excellent and make it worth having. And we managed to do them. This is now the 4th week in a row. Every time we've led with something different. So me and Telfer last week led with the fact that, yes, if you're abroad and you want to access a show that may not be available normally in that region, you can fire up NordVPN, ping it back to the UK, and then you can access the shows that you usually would normally like to watch. But there's another aspect of it as well, in that if you are watching Scottish football, so I made a boo-boo. I got a little bit too carried away on Thursday and Friday, and then I woke up on Saturday and I was like, will I go through to Tynecastle and sit there and be miserable because I'm that hungover, or will I just watch it in the house? I thought, I'll watch it in the house. So what I did is I got NordVPN. I took out a game subscription, or I took out a month subscription on the Hearts International podcast, pretended I was abroad, and therefore I was able to watch Hearts 3, Falkirk 0, and see an outstanding goal from Alexandros Kizaridis in the moment that it happened, and share in the love and the text messages, and also do the thing where you just take a video of your laptop as the replays are coming, and then put it in the group chat for everybody who wasn't too hungover to actually make the games, can then see it back immediately. So I felt like I was doing a duty.
God's work.
Yeah, I was doing
God's work for you.
Yeah.
It's very handy. I have to say, people, not so much for goals, it's more for when you're fucking fuming about decisions, is when it's most bit. And then rattling around with random folk beside you, people flashing their phones in your face, showing you there was in fact a handball.
Yes, that's a good way of doing it as well. So yes, NordVPN, I was thankful to have NordVPN for that, but there's, as we say, there's many other uses for it. There's obviously the government, the new act that's coming. It's meant you have your age verification on certain sites. If you don't want to do that, then NordVPN can help you get around that.
Because for certain sites, doing that will be one of the most shameful moments of your entire life. So if you don't want to partake in that, and what is already a period of time that you prefer you wouldn't partake in anyway, Yes, I think that would be good.
And it's also, they take their internet security very seriously, so you can, and in this day and age,
Imagine they didn't.
Imagine they didn't. But that's the whole reason to have it on, just constantly, because it helps you keep all your data safe, helps you keep your details safe from the scammers who are trying to rip you off or steal your identity. They are very big on their internet security, so you have no fears about that as well. So, if you're interested in signing up for NordVPN, you can do so with a free 30-day money-back guarantee by going to nordvpn.com/terracepod. Once more, that's nordvpn.com/terracepod for a free 30-day money-back guarantee. Speaking of money-back guarantees being useful, Rangers and Russell Martin. and basically half that squad that they've signed as well, I would say. But Rangers did get a victory, a long-lasting victory for Rangers in the Scottish Premiership with the last kick, well, not quite the last kick of the game, because there was 8 minutes of injury time in the score in the second or third minute, I believe it was, but Rangers leaving it very late to get their first victory of the Scottish Premiership season. A sentence that's just weird when it was the sixth time of asking, and again, they also needed injury time to do it away to Livingston. Max Aarons getting that winning goal after Mo Salah had cancelled out James Tavernier's opener. James Tavernier also missing a penalty while Rangers were on top in the first half. Tony, where will we start with this one? We'll start with the Rangers fans. Fair play to the Rangers fans. Usually a victory means you forget everything, and I think that's sometimes the frustration of football supporters, is that you're raging about things and you want things to change, and then you get 3 points and everybody just kind of forgets about it for a week. But no, as soon as Rangers, and even just right after Rangers had scored the goal, which had given them the 3 points, you could hear the fans chanting, Martin, get to fuck. And Martin himself, again, kind of fair play is all right. Martin himself said afterwards, didn't bother the clapping the fans because he just knew that would make him the centre of attention, because the Rangers fans would be going mental at just his appearance clapping them. But he got right up the tunnel and let the players themselves take the applause for managing to dig out in the end. I'm not sure how much applause they deserved for this overall performance, but I mean, if you were being really creditable, you could say there were certain signs at points to see what they're maybe trying to build towards. As my voice goes really high because I don't even believe this myself.
Aye, if you're being really, really kind, I would say after the first 15-20 minutes, that half hour was the best they played in a domestic game, certainly. But as you said, for the Rangers fans, you and Rob spoke about it. The League Cup game could have went a completely different way, and this game could have went a completely different way. And that's the thing. It's not that the Rangers fans, even though, don't get me wrong, I think they do hate Russell Martin enough as an individual to supersede pretty much anything he does now. But in reality, those two sort of back-to-back victories in domestic football, they didn't really say much in terms of where they're moving to. It didn't say anything about what the plan is. And like in the end of this game, to get that win, it wasn't some sort of tactical genius. It was Jimmy Calderwood, every single person that's ever played up front their entire life, get on the park and let's see if we can make that happen, a scramble to get over the line.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. It did work to the extent in that, well, it did work because they obviously got the goal, but also in terms of like the impact on the game, it worked in that Mikey Moore, who is not, he was somebody the Rangers fans were quite excited about when they first brought him in for Spurs. Like he's done things in a Spurs jersey, I think in Europe last season, when he looked like he's got the ability to go in and be quite a big talent in English football. But he's not really shown that so far in his loan spell at Rangers. But I thought he was quite big in those closing stages about, I mean, the final
quite interestingly got the ball over to him every single time they could.
Yeah.
They were incessantly getting the ball out to him.
Aye. Boy, the final ball still wasn't that great, still maybe better than what you wanted, but he at least was taking on that impetus to be like, right, I'm getting in space constantly, give me the ball, let me go, let me run at them. And I think that was a huge reason for Rangers eventually getting the goal, even though it wasn't him at the end of the day who managed to stick the ball in the back of the net. It was Max Aarons, who looked just as bad as he's looked throughout the rest of his Rangers career, but somehow just was in the right place at the right time and did have a kind of decent finish to put the ball in the bottom corner. But you're right in what you say, like, there was still, for the fact that there was a period of play where Rangers like were quite good, were kind of fairly entertaining to watch from about 15 minutes to half time. got the goal, got the penalty as well, should have made it 2-0. Maybe another couple of chances that could have taken Miovski, missed a great opportunity.
Oh, wow.
But it was after, like, it was the 50 minutes before then, and like the second half up until Livingston equalised, and even then, like about another 5-10 minutes afterwards, where you were just you felt they were back to square one. They were really not doing anything at all. Like, the performance the first, like, 20-25 minutes of the second half was just so lethargic, so passive. Just what we've been seeing so often out of this team when Russell Martin's taking charge, not moving the ball quickly enough and not really learning, not improving. And there's just, you can tell why Rangers fans at the end, as you said, not just because they just don't like Russell Martin and necessarily what he stands for, but also just the fact that there's just not enough there to suggest that things are going to get better.
Yeah, they've got loads and loads of good, like, better players. So obviously, incessantly over the weeks, that's going to tell at some point. But what would really worry me is, well, just like you said, it's the fact that before half time, as you said, they were playing well, it was entertaining, they should have been 2-0 up in that period. And the fact that they went into the dressing room and that didn't seem to have the uplifting effect for coming back out. As you said, they reverted back to type. And that's really worrying, because you've just got a half hour under your belt where things are going well. You look like you're going to score goals. You've created really good chances. You brought the Miovski one. It's a really nice move right through the middle. Lovely little pass for Raskin through to Miovski. And, like, if he's not scoring them, I mean, that's the bread and butter for someone like Miovski, when like composure and finishing are meant to be some of his sort of like the biggest attributes in there. So yeah, and I know I made sort of light of all the changes that he made, but he did that worked out as well, because it just broke up the momentum of the game, because it made the game stretched. It meant that Livingston couldn't just continue dominating the game, and I think Livingston will be frustrated, and Martindale frustrated tactically, that when Martin basically just went for the most rudimentary way of winning the game, and they turned the match into the most rudimentary way of a football game to be played. If they weren't able to really take advantage of that whatsoever in any way breaking forward, and that would annoy me a bit if I was Martindale, especially a manager who sort of prides himself a bit on sort of being able to react to what's going on in matches.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, going on to Livingston. Because, I mean, there's not really much more to say about Rangers. It's just kind of the same story every single week. I mean, we did have one thing, actually. Do you know what? Before we go into Livingston, Conor Barron. Now, didn't have the best of second half, but I did feel like Barron and Suter I thought were very impressive. Them two and Raskin, I think, were Rangers' best players. And Tavernier as well, were the four best players for Rangers in the first half by probably some distance. Gassama had one of the worst games I've seen him have for Rangers. He's now becoming almost like an Aberdeen signing under Jimmy Tilleen. He's just getting worse as the weeks are going along.
He started off like a train. He was like, this guy's amazing.
You say the same about Ant-Man, who looked great when he first came into the team as well.
No, he barely got a game, even though he done very well for the goal, Ant-Man. But yeah.
I get kind of like, because Ewan's still refusing to give Conor Barron really any much credit, but I get his point in that with a team that wants to have like 70% of the ball, having somebody like Barron isn't necessarily the kind of player you want. But I would say, on the other hand, he is the player you want in these types of teams, because while everybody is maybe getting a bit too preoccupied with keeping the ball for the sake of keeping the ball, I think you want somebody in that team who knows more what they are, knows their limitations, and will just bring a certain amount of urgency and running.
And aggression,
and that's what he did the first half. Missing a bit in the second half, but like we said, pretty much everybody in Rangers dropped off in the second period. And in another one was Suter, who, as you'd said in the chat, like he had these diagonal boots on that day.
The switching non-stop. It was absolutely perfect, but unfortunately it was always to Gassama. and it would break down after about 30 seconds of on the ball.
But let's move on to Livingston. Again, like this season, we've seen it from Martindale, kind of very different approach to how Livingston attacked teams when they were last in the Scottish Premiership, and well, in the sense that they didn't attack teams at all the last time they were in the top flight, but they're very much going for it this time around. They went at Rangers early on. He made a big move, took Robbie Muirhead out of the team. I think it's basically just to take him at the fire line for a game or two, because he struggled in the last couple of encounters, and he's obviously a big team for this Livingston side. Started off the season quite well, and I think that's more about just allowing him to kind of observe for a couple of games, get his head right. But he made a big call goal with Stevie May through the middle.
But I thought tactically that was spot on.
It did work. It certainly worked. It was a big call, but it worked.
Because May out of all their striking options is absolutely the best presser, and probably due to his experience the best at running channels. And again, not great for Russell Martin is the tactical approach is actually to be more aggressive against Rangers rather than the things about maybe obviously with Hibs the week before they actually tried to go the opposite way, and as you commented, that might have actually worked as well, which is also a problem if both can look like they can come up.
Well, we've seen it work with Dundee when Dundee just stayed back the entire game at Ibrox.
And then, so you've got these options, but I quite liked it with Livingston because most people, as you said, would assume that they're going to play totally aggressively and just go out to sit back, make fouls, play on set pieces, but it was nothing like that. They were pressing up at the halfway line. May was pressing the centre halves when they got to the centre circle, so it was happening in their half. So I was quite impressed with that, and I thought it worked, and it absolutely spooked Rangers, and I was really impressed with both their fullbacks because they were able to get forward. And again, the Montgomery more for his for the crossing ability and his attacking prowess, and Finlayson, who they eventually had to take off because he was really being aggressive in his role at right back.
Yeah, Finlayson was. Yeah, I think he maybe got away with it. There was a challenge after he just got booked where had it been. It's one of those ones where you just get booked and then you do it again, and the referee at that stage of the game is like, right, can you settle down,
please?
Kind of thing. As opposed to had it come 10 minutes later, it's probably like, right, okay, it's just kind of like that weird kind of psychological thing where some referees will be like, right, that's 2 ridiculous yellows in a row. You're not learning your lesson. You're going off. But I think a lot of referees are like, right, obviously you're still kind of full of adrenaline here. Let's just chill down a little, have a wee word with him, and then you know as well, you're saying to the team, right, if he does it again, he's going to be off. Whereas had it maybe happened 10 minutes later when you don't give him as much of the benefit of the doubt, had he made that challenge again, I think he would have been off. And also as well, referees just flash more cards the later the game goes into the closing stages for whatever reason. But
boredom.
One other player I would quite like to highlight for Livingston, Jerome Prier.
Yeah, I was about to say, surely.
The penalty
How did they do it? Where did they unearth all these goalkeepers? Because I was thinking, like, with I know that Shamal George had sort of 2 separate seasons at Livingston, but still you're looking at right now in the league, 3 of the better goalkeepers have all played for Livingston. And that seems mental, because then that's a quarter of the league.
Who am I forgetting other than Striek?
Striek,
you're talking about Striek, George. Yeah.
And now Prier, they're all performing really well at the moment.
Even like Liam Kelly had his best spell at Livingston.
Yeah, so Martindale, he knows a goalkeeper. He knows a goalkeeper.
But that penalty save was
excellent.
Find
the Scottish one. How about that, Martindale? That could be that's your main job. Your main calling in life now is to find us a goalkeeper.
So that penalty save, because you can say it like Tavernier, like I think on the commentary they said like, he's not lifted it enough, and yeah, if he lifts it more, the keeper's got no chance. And I suppose you could always say it's a poor penalty to an extent if you give the goalkeeper an opportunity to save it. But I think Tavernier does lift it to an extent. I think Prior just does really well to read it perfectly and gets his leg very high up in order to parry that shot. So yeah, could Tav have done better? Yes, but I think you also should credit the keeper as well, who's had an excellent start to the season.
Because he obviously is making that dive, but as you say, it's a decision that he's made to make sure he spreads himself and keeps his leg. He keeps that in play. Essentially, loads of goalies don't do that. They don't do it enough, and he gets a good toe on it. And his handling was really good over the game. He made a few other really, really good saves. He just looks like really, really safe goalkeeper. And in this league, that's fucking massive.
Right, let's move on to our second game. I didn't want to do this first because I just thought it would look like I was getting completely carried away. Let's save that for Friday's Review for the Terrace, shall we? And that is Heart of Midlothian going top of the Scottish Premiership after 6 games following a 3-0 victory over Falkirk. As I mentioned at the top in the NordVPN ad, Alexandros Kyriazidis with a stunning goal to open the scoring. Not too shabby from Lawrence Shankland himself, shooting from outside the area after Robin Henry Cartwright, following a bit of a hospital pass from Falkirk debutant, let me get his name right, Philip Lisa. And then just to make sure of the points, just a couple of minutes into the second period, Craig Halkett with a pretty shoddy for a Falkirk point of view, free header for the greatest aerial strength in the Hearts team. And that was it. Hearts go top of the table. But I did want to put this first because let's not repeat the Aberdeen stuff of last season. Let's not get carried away. It's a very good start from Hearts. And it's kind of like one of those ones where I'm always glad that Hearts went 3-0 down to Motherwell and that game finished a draw, because had it been 6 wins for 6 and a 4-point gap at the top of the table, then I think people would start to lose their mind. And it's probably best for everybody concerned if that doesn't happen.
And why not, Fowler? I mean, I certainly would be partaking in it if the shoe's on the other foot. I think
Hearts fans have been here before, not too long ago. We know
how exciting normally we win 2 games on the trot. The Gorgie boys are back in town.
Aye, but that's for third. That's where we're happy to be. That's where we're a bit more comfortable being.
That's what you feel yourself.
Yeah, we're not comfortable being top of the pile, not at all. And it is something like I've seen people like online saying, "Oh, fucking Hearts fans getting carried away." I think the majority of Hearts fans I've seen are like not getting carried away because of what happened. I know it was 20 years ago now, but still, especially after the podcast this summer, the Tsar of Hearts, the excellent BBC Scotland podcast, BBC Sounds podcast, led by Martin Geisler, that kind of reminded everybody of what happened in the 2005-2006 season, where Hearts looked like a team capable of winning the title and then it all unravelled. Now, Derek McInnes isn't likely to get sacked for no reason in this campaign. However, I still don't think it's a team that I still wouldn't think was the quality of that one, but it's certainly looking like a side at this point in time that can give the Hearts fans a very entertaining season. It's annoying that they're already out of the League Cup from a Hearts perspective, because that had to got to the semi-finals, you'd be looking at that and saying, yes, this is a competition we could definitely win. But, can Hearts have a good race for second place and do something in the Scottish Cup with this team? Absolutely. And it's also just a number of really good players in the side that it's just exciting to watch every week. Kizaridis being a perfect example of that. He's somebody that's looked good so far. Took him a wee bit of time where he was coming on kind of just late in matches. Then he came on against the game against Livingston. He was a huge reason for that comeback. Just electric in that second period. Made one goal, scored the other. And then this goal here was just out of this world quality. Like, he's a little bit fortunate with a break of the ball on the run, but then that finish, the curl and the pace on it is incredible.
Yeah, because it's side-footed, but it's got the power of like if he was using his laces. Yeah. And that's it. The techniques. Something I've noticed is that McInnes seems to be moving slowly towards having a bit of a settled team here.
Yes, it was the same team for 2 games in a row, which was surprising because he specifically went with Harry Milne at right midfield against
for
Rangers.
Game, yeah.
Yeah, to combat what Rangers had down that side with basically trying to stop Gassama from doing much in the game. But Milne done enough kind of in possession himself, including also winning the penalty, although that was when he was switched over to the left-hand side. Done enough to kind of suggest that he was fine there. And it still, to me, doesn't look like a natural fit when he's out there. He still always kind of wants to attack inside. And it also kind of limits what he's best at doing when he's at left-back, which is going down the outside and putting balls into the penalty area. However, Hearts are playing with a 4-4-2 so far this season. Kizaridis on one side is a proper out-and-out winger. Then you've got Braga and Shankland up top. Now, to be fair, both of them kind of like to drop a little bit, so that can help out with the midfield. But you're always looking at the possibility that you could get overrun in the centre of the park. Now, in Benigame Devlin, he's got 2 players that are very good at combating that. I've always thought the 2 haven't really worked as well as a pair when they're together because there's just a kind of lack of size there. But fair play, it's working together this season. Cammy Devlin's been in exceptional form recently. And it seems like he does. I don't want to get too carried away because he always has these wee spikes and it goes down again. But if anybody's to get the best out of Devlin on a consistent basis, it is Derek McInnes. But Milne being on the other side and just kind of having that natural, maybe kind of easing inwards slightly because he's left-footed, he's not right-footed, makes it more of that kind of balanced midfield 3. And when
does it turn it more into a 4-3-3 quite a lot of the time with Kizaridis pushing more forward and Braga and Shankland and And it's a
I would say,
forward
or
three.
at the very least, that kind of balance where you've got three guys who could look after the centre of the park more who can look after the front three a bit more. I think it will be, if he's want to stick with this full time, I'll still have my doubts about it in terms of Milne at right midfield. But if he wants to go at full time, I think it would work even better once Borchevink is back from injury. Because McEntee is fine as a stopgap. And again, it's all about kind of having a bit of balance to your team. If you're going to have, say Milne comes out and he plays another winger on the right, like Kurjota, for instance, then I think you want a McEntee at right back because he's just a steady presence at right back and you can almost make it like a three because he's not going to go forward as often. And then you can have Milne, say, back at left back, kind of push it on a bit more. And then you can have the team kind of that kind of balanced but unbalanced, if that makes sense, kind of attack. But it's certainly plenty of options. A lot of players in form, like Kizaridis, outstanding. Braga, it wasn't even his best game, but you can still see how much work he puts in.
He's built for it, though. He's built for Scotland. They can see exactly what the mindset was when picking up Braga. You can see the sensibility behind it because just all action players do well. He's big, he's strong, and then you're also, and that's before he's got all those types of attributes before you even start getting into the skills and the shooting ability and the fact that he's really quite accurate and he's accurate and powerful with his shots. So, like I was saying this before, I mentioned it with the Livingston game. The thing that I liked with Chaiwa, for example, was that it was the things before he got the ball. It was all the other parts of his game. I'm like, right, that all looks like it makes sense for when you're taking a foreigner into Scotland, and you can definitely see that with Braga because he just looks, as I said, purpose-built for playing in Britain, to be honest.
And somebody to shout out, Stephen Kingsley. Now, I think it might
He's made
be
it back in left back, hasn't he? And he's not playing centre half. He's playing like flat left back again, isn't he?
Yes. Fair play to Stephen Kingsley. I think it's maybe just a thing that if Stephen Kingsley is playing for Hearts and it's is it an even numbered season, then he's going to play well because he's just kind of had that when he's been like good then bad then good then bad then good then bad, and then it just keeps happening through his Hearts career. Did have a great campaign last time around. I think a lot of Hearts fans thought he was coming to the kind of twilight years of his career. He was past his best, which is, maybe a bit harsh for a guy who's still only 31 years old. But I suppose it was wondered whether he now had to be a specialist. Like he had to be left of a back three, and that was his only position. But he's been at left back for the game at Ibrox. He was left back again against Falkirk. Second half, he was probably Hearts' best player in this game. So it shows that he's still got plenty to offer left in the tank, especially somebody that when everybody's maybe fit and when everybody's firing, and maybe when you're not playing a left back at right midfield to balance out your team, then he's still going to be second choice. So it adds a little bit more strength and depth as well.
Falkirk, Fowler, what went? I mean, we were speaking, me and you were speaking positively about them, obviously with the comeback against Hibs during the week last week. Obviously it's a bit different kettle of fish going away for home against one of the big clubs, but is any thoughts on them?
Going up against a team that's very much got its tails up at this point in time and doesn't have, especially after like winning at Ibrox, doesn't have kind of major weak points standing out. And also as well, because they weren't playing in the League Cup last weekend as well, very well rested after a couple of weeks, whereas Falkirk were playing on Tuesday. So I think they were always on a bit of a hide into nothing. I think the interesting things about them in this, I mean, the start of the game, it wasn't like Hearts were absolutely all over them. But once they went behind, they did struggle a bit, and probably thankful to Scott Bain for keeping the score down. But in fairness, once the score went to 3-0, instead of crumbling, they did come back into it and did ask some questions of Hearts. And I love that Gary Oliver can just play at any level of football, as long as you just need a player in a certain situation who's going to work hard and keep possession for you.
Yeah, there is players like this. They do exist where it doesn't matter where you plump them in, you'll get the exact same level of performance.
Because he did come off the bench and he did make an impact in terms of helping to stem the tide for Falkirk and make sure that they didn't end up on the receiving end of like a 5 or 6-0 thumping, something that really might have killed confidence. And it was just through doing that, just through working hard and making the right decision all the time and making sure that Falkirk kept the ball. But yeah, like Philip Lisa, I mentioned, I wasn't really that impressed by him. To be fair though, Sam Hart, who is another defender making his debut, and I think I'm right in saying it was a debut for Lisa. I'd certainly never come across him before. Yeah, it was his debut as well. But Sam Hart was the more kind of older player they signed, supposed to be signed as as a left back, like another option other than Leon McCann, but they put him in at right centre back because Lisa was just kind of needed taken out.
Taken away, aye.
And they didn't have, Nielsen wasn't available to play because he's a Hearts player. They also didn't have, Cole Donaldson's not back fit yet. Tom Lang's not available either. But Hart was good when he went into that position. But there was a few performances, like Ethan Williams having looked good against Hibs, didn't look good in this one. He was taken off at half-time. Calvin Miller, still not really looking up to Premiership level, but he was a bit more lively in this game. Cartwright, he did some good things. Maybe a wee bit harsh to take off Cartwright at half-time. I think it was seen that it was a combination of him and Lisa being at fault for the second goal. Like, poor pass to begin with, but then Cartwright should just know what's around him and immediately get rid of the ball as opposed to trying to play his way out of trouble. Then Shankland takes it off him. But he was taken off at the break. I thought that was maybe a bit unlucky for him because I thought Spencer or Tate could have been off instead. But obviously McGunn was just kind of looking at the error that's been made and decided to go for that. But overall, yeah, like I say, it's hard to kind of really talk too much about Falkirk because it's just like, this is not the type of game in which their season's going to be judged by.
Scott Bain, is he the next pointless third choice goalie that we're going to argue about that makes no discernible difference to anything in these squads, but people will get up in arms about it? Is that a thing?
So I think he might be called.
He at least plays football.
Yeah, he plays football. He's played it to quite a high standard this season. I still think that Angus Gunn, regardless of whether he's playing football.
I'm not talking about Bain starting. I mean, calm down. I mean, who's taking the pointless roles that people get angry about? Other
than Gunn, Steve Clarke really has seemed to go with goalkeepers that are playing football, which I don't think is necessarily that. I mean, to be fair to Clarke, undeniably, you want your goalkeeper to be playing. You want everybody in your team to be playing every week, to be playing regularly. But I think with goalkeepers...
That's a hot take.
But with goalkeepers, I don't think it matters as much because there's not as much of a fitness kind of aspect to it. And yes, there is definitely going to be things like concentration and just kind of repetition of your kind of basic stuff that you are going to be better at if you're playing every week. And it will matter to an extent. But also, our goalies are all a bit crap.
Yeah. So much of muchness. Amazing anyone's playing.
Maybe it's good that they're not actually getting a game because it means that they're not going to
be that lack of confidence. I didn't realise that's where you were going there. They'll all feel great when they get called up for Scotland.
Xander Clark's stock's never been higher than when he was playing last season. Then he played this season, and he was the I think statistically, according to Wisecout, in terms of prevented goals per 90, Clark is the worst goalkeeper in the league. I think Bain's one of the better ones. I think Shamal George was out in front. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's got an Scottish granny or not. But yeah, so I would still say Angus Gunn, number one. But Bain could come in as number two. He could come right in as number two off of the fact that he is playing regularly and he is doing well.
There is, as I said earlier, there's a huge job. We don't need any other coaching staff. We just need someone to go and find a goalkeeper. That is the single most important job in Scottish football right now. Discovering a goalie.
Okay, let's move on to our third match from this past weekend. And where should we go now? Let's go to the game that probably wasn't the better of the two, but had more last-minute drama, and that was obviously Motherwell 2, Aberdeen 0. Both Motherwell goals, their first league win of the season. Another team getting their first league win of the season. Coming in stoppage time, Johnny Kadrombis scored with a huge help from Dimitar Mitov, who made a uncharacteristic howler for the Dons, and then Apstam, I'm just going to go for that. Sometimes I do his name, sometimes I make the entire attempt at all, but I'm just going to go with Apstam on this occasion, scoring from the penalty spot for his first goal of the league season, and a goal that was very much coming for him after missing a number of chances in recent games, including a big one in this one as well, to seal the points for Motherwell. So it means that Motherwell start to the season, as I think Mikey Stewart said in the BT Sport broadcast, looks a lot better because instead of being winless and undefeated, they've now got a victory and are undefeated, and that's a lot better.
But and Aberdeen, a semi-final.
And a semi-final look forward to.
All you needed to do was play Aberdeen back-to-back.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But Aberdeen bottom of the table still, now 4 points adrift. Oh, sorry, they're 4 points adrift anyway. But, oh no, they weren't actually, sorry, they were only 3 points adrift because of Rangers. So they're now 4 points adrift. Falkirk are now in 11th place. And Aberdeen have still yet to score a goal in the Scottish Premiership. But Tony, I only saw the end of this match. What a few minutes to catch. But you watched all of it, and for what I believe, Aberdeen finally done something different, changed the shape.
Yeah, they went back to the shape that they used to win the Scottish Cup. And I heard a rumour from someone today that he didn't actually want to do that on the day of the Scottish Cup. It was actually the players that decided they wanted to do that.
That's pure street talk. Pure street talk.
I'm not a journalist. I'm just a football fan, man. I'm a football fan with a microphone. I can rifle this stuff off whenever I feel like it. So, but they went. They did go to 3 at the back for this game. They brought Tobers, Milne, and Kunster, if that's how you pronounce it, out there, and Nicky Devlin coming in at right wing back, and Gyamfi at left wing back. And as in every other game, they started well. Aberdeen start well pretty much in all the games, as far as I can see, for like 5-10 minutes, and then they sort of just like retract. It's like they're freezing, like a penis in the wind. It just absolutely retracts into their body. And
in a cold pool, surely. In a cold pool.
Whatever a penis retracts into their body, that's what Aberdeen do. And it's just, and it must just be absolutely infuriating. It's like, because they don't get that little confidence booster in that first 5-10 minutes, it's just like everything that's been worked on just goes out the window. I just don't understand how it possibly have got to this. They've not got any sort of discernible style anymore. We always used to talk about them being like up and at them, and fullbacks getting into the box, and they were always obviously sold as a pressing team, all that jazz, but it just disappears. And here they went with the 3 up front, Auchichi, Carlison, and Nisbet, and
it's Auchiche and
Auchiche.
It's Auchiche, and it's Noster as the centre half.
Noster. Well, Auchiche, it's not going to matter how I pronounce his name, because he's not going to be long for this world in Aberdeen. That guy cannot be fucking fucked. Let's be frank. Like, he's clearly doesn't fancy this at all, and who can bloody blame him? He just doesn't want to get. It doesn't look like he gets involved at all. And Carlison, it starts to, like, before it looked like he was a guy trying to do something, that can morph into someone playing for themselves quite quickly. I can see already fans stating that, and when I was looking at Aberdeen fans, and it's just absolutely fucked, man. It's absolutely mind blowing what has happened to that team, and it doesn't matter who they put out there. And again, like the Gyamfi, I thought he was abysmal in the first half. Just didn't offer anything. He was just up and down the flank. He didn't have a good touch. He didn't get to the byline. He wasn't putting crosses in. And it was probably no surprise at half-time that they went ahead and they made a double sub, I think. They took Gyamfi off to put Keskinen on and Kunster on and Dorrington on. And it's just, or Nonster, whatever his name is. Sorry.
Noster.
What was that?
It's Noster.
Noster. I mean, it's not like he's been playing it for ages. Noster, but and then obviously that give them the obviously tried to get impetus going down that side, but Motherwell essentially just picked them off. I quite like the way that Motherwell sort of set up again with Elliot Watt was absolutely superb. Once again, what a clever signing. Whoever made that, because I'm assuming it wasn't the man. Askew, I'm assuming it's not him. I think it was all done before he came in. But it's been such a clever signing. As you said before, Motherwell, they would have been bringing in these players. The manager they had before had a similar mindset as what they're bringing in. That's what made this all seems to be working and making sense. But whoever was watching Elliot Watt and figured out how this would work, absolute genius. I thought he essentially ran the show. I think Welsh looks like a pretty clever signing. I know people don't love Welsh, and we've not got really a lot of evidence about him because he's not played a lot of football. But I still think it seems relatively sensible putting him in there as sort of like a pretty rugged centre half. I think it's something that they probably lacked. And then the way that they used, because we're talking about a Motherwell team also missing arguably two of their main attacking threats.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, with Just still not being available and Slattery not playing in there. So they had their bit, the way they used the interchange in between Charles Cook, Said and Maswanisi. Even though Maswanisi had a pretty quiet game until the later stages, it works really well, and I think it really suits Regan Charles Cook because he's able to just drift in central whenever he wants. Essentially, it doesn't look. Charles Cook looks like he's just got a complete free role in behind there, and he was picking up the ball loads. He was driving at the team. I think just another just feels like that. Even if he can't hit the heights goal scoring wise that he done at Ross County, it's just that he's definitely going to be a good player, especially in the way that they play. And it's a guy who's quite aggressive when he's running. He likes to dribble, so it's maybe something they lack in other parts. But it was a pretty rubbish game, let's be honest. And then towards the end, Aberdeen bring on Lazetic, and that last sort of before the goal for Motherwell's opening goal for Johnny. That whole run of play is just it's my favourite so far. It just encapsulated everything. Whole stand of Aberdeen fans up in that upper tier when they're put away, screaming at him to chip the goalie. The goalie's so far off his line. It's such the obvious thing to do at that point with Ward that far off his line, running back, doing that thing. When they're running, they're still trying to look, so their body shape's not good at all. In the situation, and rather than just do it, take the risk and do it, he tries to get closer and closer, and then does a meek trundler past the post, and then the next time you look up. Well, sorry, on you go, please.
No, so that was the worst thing about it as well, because he should have went with his left, and he still could have went with his right. I think he's left-footed, so he should have done that initial one. He obviously shut out of doing it. But that was definitely to try it early on when the goalie's off his line to try and chip him. He could have done it with his right, but he advanced further, and then, like you say, he had that meek shot. But by the time he got to that point, he had help. And if he'd held on to it a couple more seconds and just slipped it to the left, there was also another very good chance he would have scored. He just done the worst thing 3 different times.
And it's a guy with no confidence, with a team with no confidence. I did find it weird with the last signing, just a young player whose careers went awry and hasn't scored in a couple of years. That doesn't scream, I'm going to come and sort out a team that can't score whatsoever. And then this bit, I mean, he done a finish in the first half when Aberdeen finally got into the box. They cut it back, and he could have done like a sweeping shot, and instead he done a back heel. I would have been going insane if I was an Aberdeen fan at that. It just... In that situation, there's just no room for this type of shit. You need to kick that ball properly towards the goal. Like, there's no questions about that. So there was just Aberdeen played better. They looked more solid in the 3. I don't want to just be. It's just so hard to look beyond some of the things that annoy you about individual players and the decision making that we're talking on, but they did look more solid. They did look more likely to score. Keskinen, when he ran through and hit the side net, and they did look like they could cause Motherwell problems. But it's just what's going to, how Cheech is going to get dropped the next game. They'll bring someone else in, and it's just a merry-go-round of players. As always, Carlison gets hooked at half-time as well. It's just a merry-go-round waiting for. It's like Tilleen thinks there's just going to be some sort of silver bullet for one of these guys, and then everything's just going to take off. And it's just, I'm finding that people keep using the Hibs for last season. I heard a lot of that as to why it might go Aberdeen, but I think it looks different from that. It was more individual errors. People still thought that there was a horrendous goalkeeper involved. It's not where this is. Like death by 1,000 cuts. It's not good. There's not very much good to like about it at all. And probably Motherwell's poorest performance of the season is ultimately what pulls some of the points because they get a bit of luck because they're playing the most listless team in the country.
Right, I think that'll do it. So I think you covered it all. Tony, let's move on to our next game. So the last one was a game that you saw that I saw the end of it, but I didn't see much of it. But this game I saw all of, and you've just saw the highlights. That is Dundee United 0, Kilmarnock 2. Goals in each half from Bruce Anderson and Robbie Dees give Stuart Kettlewell's Kilmarnock their first victory of the season. A lot of first victories of the season here, the league season, I should add, in this past weekend. And Tony, like I said, you said the Motherwell Aberdeen game wasn't a great game. We went for that first because of the late drama. But this game, I think, was actually a very good match, and I think kind of demonstrates the fact that the Scottish Premiership this year has been largely quite good fun to watch because we've got a lot of teams who like to play, if not like out-and-out attacking football, then at least be a bit adventurous, mix it up between direct and playing it through the team. A number of kind of interesting and exciting players to watch, and I thoroughly enjoy this. I mean, you can see it for the stats of this one. There were 35 shots in total between the two teams, 14 on target, 15 corners. And Dundee United could look at this and say they were maybe a little bit unfortunate to come away with nothing from this one, but I don't want to take that away for Killie, who were also impressive in their own terms. Which team would you like me to start with?
I wouldn't mind hearing about Kilmarnock's defence, really, because they were going up against a team that's found goals pretty easy to come by, and with Dolchek, literally the top goal scorer in the league, and Kilmarnock have conceded a lot. They drew 2-2 nearly in a large amount of the games. So what changed? What was good about Kilmarnock in that defensive sense?
So I was surprised after the match in, I was going to say midweek. It was the previous weekend. It was the League Cup game against St Mirren. I said after that one that I felt that their midfield three of Kiltie, Polworth, and Watson didn't have enough kind of, probably over the three of them, kind of tough running, kind of tough tackling, kind of physicality to match up with the St Mirren three of O'Hara, Phillips and Bacchus. And then I saw that they started the same. This one I thought, oh, that's interesting, because usually we maybe change it after it's not quite worked. But there were things in that St Mirren game that did work about. Obviously, Kettlewell saw that and working in this game, and it very much did. So that kind of gave them a decent basis. But in terms of the defensive, so obviously that kind of helped protect the defence, because it's three players going against two, because United line up in the 3-4-3 where it's Savelge and Camera in there. So that gives them a wee bit more solidity, even though it's the same personnel. I would say that the back three all had great games. Stanger, Mayo and Dees. Dees in particular I thought was really impressive. Not just the goal, just his overall play. Made a couple of really kind of important late blocks as well. And remember, Mayo had one, and maybe Stanger had one as well when the game was still in the balance. But going back to the midfield, like that was kind of key. So if we talk about Killie's defence being good, then what kind of gave them the platform to go and win the game was being able to exploit the fact that Savelge and Camera, who I thought both had excellent games for United, Savelge in particular, going forward, just seemed to be everywhere and was at the heart of so much they did. And Camera, like we've seen him before, like how many times he gets the ball under pressure and is able to kind of take some really nice touches, get his way out of it.
Snake hips.
Some of the interchanges they two had together were them used to pass of each other and then using like a third player to get them up the park. Really nice to watch. There was a lot to like about United in this one. I'll get to some of their negatives later, but they were really the kind of big reasons why this was kind of, it was just a really fun game, like teams going back and forth constantly. But the weakness was that they were just a wee bit too flat, and that without any kind of help in there, it meant that Watson in particular, they would have maybe expected Kiltie a bit more, but it was more Watson. You could see that with the first goal, was able to get beyond them, and then they just caught a bit flat, caught a bit square. And the first goal, you can see it with Polworth makes a nice reverse pass into Watson. He lays it off, and Bruce Anderson, a really nice finish.
Oh, I loved it. That was a deadly finish for Anderson, right in the corner.
And to talk about the United, the front two for Killie, they gave a good go of it, but I thought United's defence had them reasonably well marshalled. I think like Esselink won the the battle with Dackers, him and Kiristes, I think they won that. Bruce Anderson was a wee bit more of an issue, but I thought the big reason was that United, Killie, when they got into the final third, made stuff happen, and right up until the end as well, where Marley Watkins should have made it 3-0 late on. But and the other kind of opportunities, Dundee United did have opportunities, but probably not as much as their possession should have dictated. They had 59% possession in this one, and I just felt the final ball was a bit lacking, and the front three for United, as well as Killie's defence played well, and all three of them did, they weren't really going up against the best performance from that United front three. Like, Dolcic didn't really do anything in the game. He was it was him and Fata were taken off on 57 minutes. That was when United could have looked at the first half, thought, right, we're unlucky to go a goal down. But the start of the second half, up until Killie made it 2-0, United just really weren't in the game, and that's because they couldn't get anything going further forward. Fata fell out of the game completely after kind of doing his thing earlier on. I wondered if it was just a tactical decision with the Aberdeen game to have, Fata dropping deep and Dolcic kind of staying up top. So it's almost like a 3-5-2 at times, but they've done it again, so this must be just a regular tactic. Fata was getting involved for doing that, but then he fell out of it and Dolcic just wasn't in the game at all. And I do wonder about Sapsford as the number 9. It's kind of a case of needs must at the moment. Without Waters there, Sturton's out as well. They obviously brought on Moller, but I don't know how fit he is in terms of being able to start matches. And I just think Sapsford's probably at his best when he's playing in one of the wider positions or playing off a striker. Like maybe he's like the second striker in a 2 up top system. So that was kind of what did it for United. But I mean, fair play to Killie, because they did go out in that second half. It's not like, as well what I'm saying, it's not like they got outplayed in the first half at all. It was very much, they were in the game, and they could look at it and say they put in a good performance and they deserve to have the lead. I would say probably a draw at half-time would have been about fair. But then they really came out and kind of put their foot down on United's neck, got that 2-goal lead, and then a couple of good substitutes for Kettlewell. So they were under a wee bit of pressure from United after the second goal had gone in, as you would maybe understand. United brought in a couple of players in Muller, and let me just remind myself of the other boy they brought on.
Eskison.
Yeah, Eskison, who, by the way, just as a quick aside, weird looking the way he's got his strip in his shorts. So he's got the strip, he's got the shorts quite high and the strip tucked in, but the strip's quite loose. So he's got it so tucked in aggressively, it looks like he's just about to play in like the 1955 FA Cup final. Like it's a weird aesthetic he's got going on.
So the second he scores, I know he's just going to shake people's hands and go straight back to the centre circle.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what he's going to do. But Kettlewell reacted well to that. He made the right subs at the exact right time. He brought off. Who was it? He brought off? No, he left Dackers on. I think. Yeah, he left on Dackers. Brought off Anderson. Brought Daniels on and brought on Brad Lyons, which is key as well, and kind of reinforced that midfield area. And both of them were very lively immediately after coming on. And that got Killie back up the park, made them an attacking threat again, and made sure it just wasn't
wave after wave,
on their goal for the rest of the game. They did. United end up obviously did get the penalty at the end, which they could have maybe got back in it. I think it was still 3 minutes to go when that happened. But Striek made up for a ridiculous challenge to give away the penalty in the first place, and B, slightly made up for looking like he couldn't be arsed in that League Cup quarter-final game against St Mirren when it came to the penalties by making an excellent save from Sapsford, and that basically done it for all 3 points for Killie. So, like I say, plenty to like about both teams. I was kind of being trying to be careful there in terms of saying who deserved it and that. I think both of them could easily say, I think United could say on another day, we could have got 3 points there. I think Killie have every right themselves to say, no, we played a smart game there. We took our chances when it came out. We defended really well. We deserved those 3 points. Just a very good game of football that probably deserved to finish like 3-2 instead of 2-0.
It's massive for Kettlewell.
Yes.
Going at that, because the fixtures sort of were pretty good for them for a start in a season. And yeah, they were losing, but the fact that they were picking up lots of draws in that, and then suddenly to go to Tannadice right now looked like probably one of the hardest assignments you could get after the start of the season. So he'll be delighted to pick up that, because now he's got a home game, back-to-back home games against, well, 2 teams that are in the top 3 at the moment in Hearts and St Mirren. So who knows? Who knows? But I think that was much needed at that time for Kettlewell because, as I said, it could go one of two ways at that point when you've had that sort of kind of the average start.
Yeah, not so much for Martin, but for Askew and for Kettlewell getting that victory, so you don't have a winless start to the season. Obviously, for Motherwell, it's now unbeaten. Killie don't have that, but their only defeat was that game against Celtic where
they were unlucky.
Yeah, they're very unlucky. It wasn't a penalty.
Aye.
Right, let's move on to our penultimate game. St Mirren 1, Dundee 0. Now, again, it's another game I've seen and you've not, but I'm not going to talk as long about this one as I did about the United game, because in United Killie, I was saying that that was a very good game and kind of shows Scottish football is, I think the Scottish top flight has been good fun to watch this season because a lot of teams have been quite entertaining, quite attacking.
It is much improved, eh?
It is much improved. Certainly from a couple of seasons ago. Last season wasn't bad. A couple of seasons ago was pretty dull. This feels like it's maybe taken it up a notch with, apart from the fact we've got a ridiculous amount of draws in the league.
Aye. But I mean, there just seems to be teams are playing differently. So we're getting to see lots of different styles of teams and those styles going up against each other, etc. And like even the teams that play three at the back are using it slightly differently, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying this season from teams have improved. I think would be the easiest.
All that being said,
who says we don't love Scottish football? Don't love Scottish football even before you do that.
This was not a good game whatsoever. This was just quite. I mean, to be fair to St Mirren, they got themselves ahead in the first half, and then the onus then is obviously on Dundee to try and do something to get back at the game, and they just never looked like doing it. Now, to be fair to both teams here, some key players missing. St Mirren were without O'Hara, they were without Bacchus. I mean, Fraser was missing, but Richard King just kind of comes in for them. But they were missing a couple of players. Dundee, no Simon Murray for them, which is obviously a huge loss as well. So there was some key kind of players that can, especially if you're looking at O'Hara, looking at Murray, can make an impact in an attacking sense. However, it was still quite crap a game. And a lot of the reason it was quite crap is just because Dundee against Livingston the other week, that was quite fun to watch. That was a good game. Dundee had a goal. It looked like Presley has to get taken the leash off. But it seems maybe because he's had a couple of results away from home that have been quite good. He got the draw at Ibrox, he got the draw at Killie. It might take a while for him to let the leash off for an away game because they were just kind of just what we've seen a lot for Dundee this season. They were quite passive. They were like, they stood off, they dropped back. I mean, St Mirren didn't create an awful lot, so it kind of worked to an extent, but they also really never looked like scoring. Now, Presley could look at it and say they didn't look like scoring because he really didn't get anything out of his front players. Cammy Congreve, excellent against Livy. He had a very poor game. In fact, I think he was quite lucky to last the 90 minutes. I could see the thinking with that you keep him on because anybody's going to do something, it's probably going to be him. But he was just poor for start to finish in this one. Joe Wesley as well. I've seen him have better games. He didn't do much. And without Murray and not being able to kind of rely on many of the other kind of forward players that they have, he's gone with Ashley Hay up front and he didn't do anything. And I didn't even really I didn't really know what Dundee were trying to do. I think what they were trying to do actually was to pass it through defence to midfield and into the front players and maybe get the interchange going that they got against Livingston with Finlay Robertson and Congreve kind of working really well together. But that just wasn't happening at all in this game. They weren't able to pass it through. What was happening is that they were knocking it short from goal kicks to centre-halves. Centre-halves are playing it amongst each other, having a look up, finding their options closed down, and then just launching an aimless ball forward towards either Hay or Wesley that was easily dealt with by the St Mirren defence. And there's really not, other than the fact that Presley took a ridiculously long time to make any subs, and his game that his team looked barely in despite being only one goal down, there's really not much else to say about Dundee. It was just a lot of what we've seen so far this season.
It's just the surefire sign of a team doing shit in Scotland is passing the ball around the back 4 times and then shelling it forward. It's like that's the makeup of exactly what they're shit or they're not in a good mood. They're not going to do well. So unsurprising to hear that's how Dundee were behaving. But St Mirren did manage to get the win. Fowler and house favourite Killian Phillips got his first goal of the season, didn't he?
Yes, and liked the celebration as well, blowing kisses to the Dundee fans behind the goal.
Has to do something. He can't just move. He always has to be behaving in some way.
And then he done a nice wee knee slide to finish it as well. But the player I'd actually like to focus on a little bit more from a St Mirren point of view, and the player that I probably enjoyed watching in this game the most was Roland Aduwe. So remember last season, Aduwe came in. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't great to start with, but also I think they kind of figured out that they wanted him at times to play in a midfield three, and he didn't really look up to doing it. And when he started playing well towards the end of the season, it was more as part of a front three, and it was kind of more as a auxiliary attacker rather as a midfielder. I think I've got that right. Please.
No, you're definitely right. We spoke about this before. Definitely, that's how that's worked.
But he moved back into the midfield three, and him and Liam Donnelly were the two players that come in to replace Bacchus and O'Hara, and that was a big reason why St Mirren ended up winning this one, because they didn't get a lot of necessarily great play out of like Jayden Richardson or Declan John as the wing backs. Mandron and Ayunga didn't link up as well as they have done throughout this season, and it could have been a game that ended up 0-0, or it could have ended up one each. And the reason why it wasn't is because I think Donnelly was quite composed on the ball. He brought on Eric Cam, that's him in midfield, and Aduwe was just very good. He was great at going forward. He played a part in helping to set up the only goal of the game, but also as well, for somebody that when he first came in seemed to have a problem defensively, he done a power of work going back. And one of the few times that St Mirren and Congreve in particular kind of got in behind the St Mirren defence and looked like they were able to do something, he just came out of nowhere, sprinted back, working his arse off. I think even kind of came from the other side, because he was the left of the midfield three, came in, made a great tackle. I think he even played it off Congreve and won a goal kick. And that showed like how determined he was. I thought he was, other than Miguel Freckleton, who was just his usual so far this season, just so poised. Just so much class about him. It's mental he's that young. He was excellent again as well.
What a find he is, by the way. What a find he is.
What a terrific signing he's been so far this season. I did put it to Mark Jordan when I done the podcast with him last week about St Mirren that I felt that Richard King had a bit of a ricket on him. He thought I was being a bit unfair because it was just that kind of one mistake in the League Cup game, which I was like, well, there was a few mistakes in that League Cup game, but he did have a strong extra time, and he did have he scored the goal of the penalty shootout, and you've seen more of him, so I'll hold my hands up. Maybe I'm wrong on this one. I still think he needs to be better in terms of his decision-making with passing the ball sometimes, because he played his team into trouble on occasion. You could definitely see the talent there, and I think he's somebody that, yes, in the long term, St Mirren fans should definitely be excited about, and if they manage to kind of polish those rough edges, could definitely make a good degree of money off him. But Freckleton is obviously the standout from the back three so far this season.
Brilliant, Fowler.
Yeah,
it shows that like maybe what you're saying about Aduwe is like what coaching can do, and maybe Jimmy Tilleen should exactly. ask for some tips from old Stephen Robinson, because that's as you're saying, that's just seeing Aduwe do something that is completely alien. I'm putting him back into a position that he was moved out of deliberately. That means he must be, that was an active decision that was made, and he was used more in the front three during the course of the season. So the fact that he's moved back tells me that it's obviously behaviour and training and something that Robinson's built up a trust for him again for playing in that area. And like you're saying, there you go. So kudos to Robinson for that, by the looks of things.
Right, Tony, let's move on to our final game, shall we? Celtic 0, Hibs 0. Hibs get a clean sheet that they were very much looking for at the start of the season with a leaky defence. The stats would suggest that they were a bit fortunate to get it. Celtic were an XG 26 shots, 78% possession, but I didn't see the game. You did. Did the stats reflect the match?
I would say that Iheanacho should definitely have scored in the first half from Maeda cross that you must have saw where he hit the bar. That's an outright sitter. Yes. And there's one in the second half where it gets cut back and he misses it. and there's one where he gets a header at the back post that I would say is a good chance, but I wouldn't say it's a guarantee. But outside of that, I felt like Hibs kind of had Celtic where they would want them as much as you can in that environment against that team. You know, like those stats are pretty much always going to be the case when you play Celtic. If I go about disappointing things for Hibs, I felt like they could have passed the ball better out from the back. I thought Jack Iredale had his best game defensively for quite a while for Hibs, but again, something that's been catching up with him a lot. His distribution has been poor, and it was poor again in this game, and would probably be the main reason that I felt like Hibs were under pressure at points. Abita had a really good game out there, apart from maybe again a 5-10 minute period in the first half where he was when he played some blind passes inside and got caught. Celtic, interestingly, as people might have noticed, they went with Iheanacho up front, and they played Maeda out on the right-hand side, which is unusual for him, and that was to make sure Tunetke could continue to play on the left. And right now you're thinking this would possibly be the first choice 3 after what happened in Europe during the week. Even though I watched the game in Europe, I thought that Negren was pretty unlucky not to continue to keep his place in this, but obviously he's trying to find a formula that helps him use Daizen Maeda. But interestingly with Hibs, because Rocky was personal issues, he was back in France. It's meant to be nothing serious, so I don't want to bother speculating or anything like that. But that meant that Grant Hanley came in, and funnily enough, I think he would. Even though like Maeda didn't work in the European game at all when I watched that, it really didn't work. He couldn't get in the game whatsoever. He didn't know when to drop deep. They weren't noticing him when he was going in behind. And then Iheanacho came in, and it totally transformed Celtic for about a 20-minute period where they probably could have won the game in Belgrade in that one period. But it was almost like Iheanacho came in, and that would probably have been Grant Hanley's preference to play against a proper number 9 who wants to get touch tight, who wants to play in there. So I think that possibly suited him, and maybe he would have disliked playing with Maeda, who would have moved more, and maybe would have moved Hanley into more wide areas that he doesn't want to be in, or dropping deep, him having to make those decisions. Because in the game, like, Hanley was absolutely superb. I don't think people will really be shocked to hear that. It's like, if you're picking a game to bring Hanley in a Hibs shirt, you probably handpick this one as one to do it. It probably has been strange. I'm not going to deny it from anyone's point of view that Grant Hanley's not been getting a game for Hibs when they've been leaking goals all over the place. I'm sure as an outsider, people think that is just mad. And he was so good in this game, and just the way he marshalled defence. He made so many great late blocks, and it was like he would like stretching to win a header deep and getting it out, and then the shot's coming out and it's him that's sprung back up and then blocking the shot as it's coming in at the edge of the 6-yard box. Interestingly enough, with Salinger being in goals, who had a good game, his distribution is definitely good. That was something that was booked in, and it was talked about as an attribute of when he was signing, that he was possibly the best goalie in the Austrian league with his feet. You could definitely see that in this game. Hibs used him constantly. It was a big part of how they were able to, it worked for Hibs really well, because it was a big part of how they were able to alleviate pressure, that they were able to keep using Salinger with the ball, and it was never something that looked like he was going to be uncomfortable. And interestingly enough, 2 clean sheets this season for Hibs, and I think it's that back 4, including the goalkeeper, who got both. So that was Livingston away in the League Cup, and then at Parkhead. So the exciting thing for that, from my point of view, is it's 2 very different games for that back 3 and goalkeeper to play in. You know, it's not like, they're only good in the deep. 2 very different sorts of things. So that's possibly exciting. And despite the fact me being, as I said, the chief of the Rocky Bashiri supporters club, I think there's no way that Hibs are in a position to stop that now. And as I said, Iredale getting form back, I really think's huge for Hibs, because I do think in that system, his role's really important as a sort of genuine left-sided of a back 3 centre-half. I think that would almost be his preferred position, because he's played left-back a lot of his career. He's played that role So that works really well, especially with the fact if Hibs use Nicky Cadden, for example, you need a specialist in behind him because his defensive leaves a lot to be desired. So I think that was really positive for Hibs. Kieran Bowie was really back, as you would expect after, as we spoke about, his performance of a drunk on Tuesday during the week against Falkirk. He was much better at it. The thing I like about Bowie is he's so clever in the way he uses his body, etc., all the things that we see, but there's still loads to improve on, and I think that's exciting. And it should be like that. He's certainly as a centre forward. Most of his game time in his career at senior level has been playing as a wide player. So he is still learning, he's training that, and sometimes how he uses his ball and his concentration when he still manages to win the ball when he's used his body, sometimes that lets him down, but that's all stuff that he can work on. Chaiwa got injured. Mulligan was still playing right wing back. So that was Mulligan brought Brock inside. Mulligan had a pretty decent game against Tunecki. It's hilarious. Hibs have been conceding so much down the right hand side. So much. And they've been chopping and changing these wing backs. And incredibly, Tunecki, who's like the form player out in that role, got a shot at Mulligan for one half, then a shot at Cadden, then he got hooked because he couldn't get any change out of them. So just football sometimes just like doesn't make any sort of sense. No. And sometimes I think we all of us need to sort of remember that. But Celtic were pretty poor. I thought they were really slow with the ball, quite cumbersome. The left back loves a shot. He must have had about 4 Sriracha shots there.
Sriracha, yeah, he cracked the bar as well.
Don't get it. It's not in a critical sense, but I thought they struggled to the 2 or 3 times they done it when they played like the quick 1-2s to open up, getting in behind on the flanks through the cutbacks. They obviously got the disallowed goal, but it's clearly offside. But they done the one in the first half where they got a cutback and it got shuffled wide. The one that I was talking about where Iheanacho missed it, and the one obviously where he hit the bar. When they quickened up at those bits, they got what they were looking for, and it just didn't happen enough. And it was sad that Hibs couldn't maybe take advantage. O'Hara had a really good chance in the first half, but I do also think that if that had gone in, you would have poked the beast, and then suddenly you're 4-1 down after 70 minutes, which happens so often. So a really good disciplined performance of Hibs, maybe finding what works for them in a defensive sense, at least for the time being. And it's something incredibly, a game at Parkhead now looks like exactly what Hibs were looking for, where it was concentrating on defending. That was the number one game plan, and everyone was on top of that. So going into Tynecastle, that'll make the team and maybe the fans maybe slightly restless going into that game.
Right, Tony, I think that'll do us.
Thank you very much for that. I had a nice time there.
Yes, so did I. And thank you to everybody for listening. Once more, remember that A View from the Terrace is back this Friday at 10:30 p.m. on the BBC Scotland channel, and you can also find it on iPlayer. And if you'd like to hear more from us, the best way to do so, if the free-to-air podcasts are not enough for you, is to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. Barring any injury or illness, Craig Telfer and Sean McGuigan will be back later this week with another low league roundup. Until then, goodbye.